Hi there, I'm Gabriel Morris, author of Following My Thumb, A Decade of Unabashed Wanderlust, which tells the stories of my world travels throughout the 1990s, from 1990 to 2000, available on Amazon.com. Check the link below if you're interested. So I'm going to be telling a series of travel stories here just spontaneously, not ones that are included in Following My Thumb. And so this one is from northern India, and this was in January of 2008, and I was in the course of a trip that took me to Thailand for 2.5 months, India for 3 months, and Nepal for 2 weeks. And so I'd been in India a couple of weeks, and I'd been in the town of Rishikesh, which is a very popular spot for Westerners in India. It's where the Beatles went in 1968 and studied with the Maharishi, and it's been a huge yoga center ever since. Actually, it was a big yoga center before that. Swami Shivananda arrived there in, I think, the 1920s, maybe the 1930s, somewhere around there, and set up his ashram, and that may have been what precipitated it becoming a big yoga center. But anyway, it was certainly a big factor. I actually did a meditation and yoga retreat at the Shivananda ashram. So anyways, I had been in Rishikesh for a couple weeks. Actually, the story begins on the train ride to Rishikesh. And I was thinking it would be cool to go up to the Himalaya mountains. Now, the problem being it was December and January. And so, obviously, it's going to be pretty darn chilly. So I wasn't even really sure if that made any sense at all. But I was thinking, I'd heard that there were hot springs in the area. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to go hang out in the Himalaya, it'd be cool to hang out in a hot spring or near a hot spring. And so on the train ride there, then I happened to talk with this Italian couple who had lived in India for the past 30 years, and they had a daughter that was there as well who had been born in India, and she was grown. So I was sitting right next to him on the train, ended up talking with him, and they actually lived in Rishikesh because the train was going to the town of Haridwar, which is near Rishikesh, and so they ended up giving me a few pointers about Rishikesh, telling me a few other places. I'd been there once before, but it had been a while. And so in the process, I thought, well, I should ask them about hot springs up in the Himalaya mountains. Who knows? Maybe they'll have heard of something. So I asked them, and the guy says, yes, check out a place called Gangnani. And so I wrote it down. And I sort of asked him a few other questions, like are there places to stay there or whatever? And they said, oh, yeah, you'll find something. I didn't really dig much deeper than that, so I was left with things being a little bit vague. So later I looked in my guidebook, and there was one paragraph about Gangnani, and it just mentioned that there were a couple chai stands there or something. And so I asked around a little bit, didn't get a whole lot more information other than that, yes, you can go there, you can get there, but it's going to take a series of buses and things to get there. And so the first thing was I had to take a bus, and a full-day bus ride from Rishikesh to the town of Uttarkashi, which is in the more or less smack in the middle of the Himalaya, the Himalaya is so huge, so it would be maybe on the more southerly part of the Himalaya, but definitely quite a bit more deeper into it. Rishikesh is basically on the very edge of the Himalaya range, right where the Himalaya mountains are meeting the plains of India, and right where the Ganges River is coming out of the Himalaya mountains from a glacier called Gangotri Glacier, which where I was heading was in the direction of Gangotri Glacier. So I take the bus up to Uttarkashi, spend a night there in a very, very funky little room, and then the next morning get up, and basically what I had to do was sort of cobble together some rides. I could get a shared Jeep, because there isn't quite enough traffic for an actual bus, at least in this time of year. And but there are people that live in these local towns, and so they take shared Jeeps, and they just wait until the Jeep fills up, and then they take off. So I got a shared Jeep to the next town, and then did the same thing to the town after that. And then from there, then it sounded like there wasn't going to be anyone going north of there, because the next town was quite a ways up. It was probably blocked by snows at that point. This was past where I was going to be going, so I could still get to where I wanted to go, but there were no towns between the town that I was in and the Gangnani hot springs. And I still didn't quite know what I was even going to see once I got there. And it was pouring down rain, And so I find a Jeep taxi driver who will take me up there just myself, and so I have to pay a bit more for it, but still it wasn't too much. And so we drive up this just crazy winding, super muddy road because it's pouring down rain still, and so the Bhagirati River is flowing in the valley just below, which the Bhagirati River is actually the young Ganges. It flows into another river further downstream, and then it's called the Ganges. But it's basically sort of a large creek at that point. And so we're going up this just windy road, through these major mud puddles and stuff. And finally we pull up to Gangnani, and it's like my book had said, it's a whole bunch of chai stands on the road. It's just basically just a stop for people who are going to Gangotri Glacier. Now, there's a major Hindu pilgrimage called the Char Dham pilgrimage. Char means four in Hindi, and so there's 4 different temples in the Himalaya, in this region of the Himalaya mountains, that Hindus go to as a pilgrimage from all over India, or probably more northern India, but they probably wouldn't go to all 4 of these temples at once because they're spread all throughout the Himalaya mountains in different. You have to go completely different routes to get up to them. But one of them is right near Gangotri Glacier, and so in the summertime, when all these roads are wide open and there's no snows, then it's a major pilgrimage route, and actually Rishikesh is a big stopping point for pilgrims going up to these temples, and so that's partly why Rishikesh is really a mix of Westerners and Indians, because Indians are journeying there on their way up to these temples up in the Himalaya mountains, and so this spot of Gangnani, where these hot springs are, is basically just a waypoint on the way up to, when people are going up further, they stop there and grab some chai and some, cookies or whatever. But there's also these hot springs there. So we pull up there. It's just a muddy road. It's a big steep hill going up this way, a steep cliff going down this way. The Bhagirati River is now on this side, and there's a few buildings sort of scattered around on the hillside, and I can't, nothing says like hotel or anything like that, so I still don't know where I'm going to be sleeping or anything. And so he says, "This is Gangnani, here you go." And so I pay him and hop out, and it's still just pouring down rain. And so I kind of, I don't think even any of the chai stands were open, maybe one or something, but so I'm not quite sure what to do next, so I just go up this hill just to poke around and see what I find. And one place I somehow managed to figure out, it is an inn of some kind, but nobody's around, but they're going to come back in a little bit. And so I'm standing there for a couple minutes, and then I'm like, well, I might as well just poke around a little bit more and see what I find, since nobody's here. And so I walk down sort of a little walkway, and I get to this other place that looks like it might be a lodge. Knock on the door, and this old man sticks his head out, and sure enough, it's a lodge, and it's open. He doesn't have anybody else staying there, but he shows me around, and there are these really cute little rooms, and so I go for the cheapest one, which is this tiny room, but it has this absolutely spectacular view of, there's a big window here, and then a big window or series of windows here, and this one's just looking up towards the Himalaya mountains that way, and this other one is looking straight down the side of the mountain, going down into the Bhagirati River, so I can actually see the young Ganges river down there at the bottom of the valley. And so I ended up staying there for, I think, 5 nights. Some people did actually show up maybe 3 nights later, couple of Indian men that were headed further up to one of those other towns. The electricity went out. Apparently it wasn't always out, but it happened to go out the day that I arrived, so we had no electricity. So every night it was just, me and him hanging out with a candle, and he'd cook me up my dinner, and he'd cook me up my breakfast in the morning, and then I'd go off and find some snacks or whatever for lunch. But the amazing thing was that the hot springs were indeed right nearby, literally about 15-20 feet away from the entrance of this lodge. Was 2 big tanks. One of them had a thing around it, so you couldn't see in, and that was for women. And then there's another one that was open, and that one was for men. And so it was a big concrete tank, and the water was just the absolute perfect temperature, nice and good and hot. And so I spent the 5 days there basically. And the thing to know about India is that budget hotels in India don't provide heating. And so when you're up in the Himalaya mountains in India, then your room is as cold as it is outside, which wasn't freezing. I actually had a little temperature gauge, and it was like, I think 43 degrees was the coldest I got, that it got inside my room, which might not sound that cold. That's okay to be out, wandering around with a, jacket and hat and everything on. But when you're sitting in your room trying to read a book, that gets cold really dang quick. And so I would just, as soon as I got cold, I'd just, strap on my towel, head down to the hot springs, soak up for a while, come back to my room, and then it'd be nice and toasty hot. Go up there. There was a nice area to do yoga, hang out and meditate or whatever. And then once I started getting chilled, just go hop back in the water. And so I just did that for the next 5 days, and then did a bit of hiking around as well. Hiked up to this little village up above there. It was sort of more of a proper village, actually. It was still tiny, but I think it had been there. It was kind of more of a traditional village that had been there probably longer than just this, series of chai stands. And saw some boys playing cricket, and hopped in and played a little bit of cricket with these guys, and then got some amazing views from there because it was higher up in the Himalaya mountains. And then from there I just finally caught another jeep back down the hill, and then headed for warmer climates.